Hello and welcome to Shattered Ice Gaming, and today we are delving into the world of card games. Yes, that's right, for once I'm not reviewing a game filled with miniatures and cardboard tiles. This is All Time Wrestling, a card game based on the wacky and wonderful world of professional wrestling. ATW, All Time Wrestling, does its absolute best to bring this world to your tabletop, and honestly does a pretty damn good job of it. ATW is a fairly simple game, but with a lot more depth than you might expect at first glance. The basic premise is that you and a friend will pick out a wrestler, some of famous stars such as Kurt Angle and the Macho Man Randy Savage, while others are made up for the game such as Jax Felix and Ray Jaguar. And then you have historical and mythical figures like Gilgamesh, and even Oda Suguri, a cyborg? Wait, what? Gilgamesh and a cyborg? What's going on with this? It sounds more like fantasy or sci-fi. Well, that's because this game is set in the year 2200, and a wealthy wrestling promoter has used a time machine to gather together the greatest wrestlers from across time to determine who is the greatest of all time, hence the name All Time Wrestling, or ATW. This idea may sound wacky and over the top, but this is pro wrestling after all, where one of the most famous wrestlers of all time is an undead wizard whose brother is an escaped mental patient who wears a mask to hide the scars on his face from where his brother, the aforementioned undead wizard, set fire to him as a child. So a time-travelling promoter isn't exactly beyond the realms of possibility in the world of professional wrestling. So, all that being said, what's this game all about? How does it play? In ATW, each player takes control of a wrestler who is represented in-game by a player board and a deck of cards. Players will track their health and stamina using these simple tracker boards and wooden cubes. And then, the momentum tracker is this kind of tug-of-war between the players that represents which of the two wrestlers is dominant in the match. So, how does all this play? Well, let's start with those player boards and take a look at how they work. Each player card has a space for your wrestler's bio card. This isn't printed on the player card itself, because some wrestlers have alternative bio cards that represent different gimmicks that wrestler might have, such as Andre the Giant having a different card to represent his Andre turned heel persona. But what is a bio card? It's quite simply a card that tells you your wrestler's name, their maximum health and stamina, and their respective thresholds for low health and stamina. For example, Andre the Giant's card tells us he has a maximum health of 20 and stamina of 11, and then these icons represent the threshold for when he is considered to be at low health and low stamina. So we use these tracker boards to track those characteristics. Place a red cube in the numbered space for your max health and a yellow cube for your maximum stamina. You will move these down the track as you take damage and play moves. But what about these thresholds? Well, these tracker boards have a handy separate track alongside the last 5 spaces of each track. Place a cube in the numbered space alongside the numbered space matching your wrestler's low health and stamina value. This helps remind you when you have crossed that threshold, as now things get a little more difficult for you. If you cross the threshold into low health, then this icon is triggered. This means that when you are pinned, you have one less chance to kick out. We will look at pinning and kicking out shortly when we talk about winning the game. If your stamina gets low, then this icon is triggered, which means all of your opponent's attacks have a better chance of succeeding. Again, more details on this shortly. And that's your wrestler's health and stamina sorted. Now, we can take a look at the rest of the player board. Each wrestler has 4 special abilities that make them unique. This top left hand ability is always a reversal, an important ability to use in dire situations where you really need to start dishing out some damage. Place a cube on this space. When you use this ability, discard the cube. You cannot use it if there is no cube there. So, reversals are a once per match ability, and it is best to use them wisely. The other 3 abilities are unique to each wrestler, and will often do things that range from dealing extra damage on your attacks to allowing you to steal the initiative. So once you've placed your cubes on the board, you are ready to rumble. Let's take a quick look at how the game works before we look at those attack cards. ATW does not use a typical turn structure. Instead, players take on the role of attacker and defender. The player who has the initiative is the attacker. Only the attacker may play cards, and is essentially in control of the game flow. That is, until they either can't attack anymore, usually because of no cards left in their hand, or they do not wish to attack anymore, as it's always good to have a couple of spare cards in your hand. The attacker also loses the initiative when they play an attack card but fail to hit their opponent. At this point the roles are swapped, with the attacker becoming defender, and defender, who is now the attacker, can begin playing cards for their big comeback. Of course, those player board abilities, such as reversal, will allow you to steal the initiative off your opponent, giving the defender some say in the momentum of the match. So all this may be sounding a bit confusing right now, but don't worry, all will become clear when we look at those attack cards, which we will be doing right now. This attack deck is the beating heart of your wrestler, and each card represents a wrestling move you can play on your opponent, such as a German suplex, a Spanish fly, or a British bulldog. Oh wait, no, he's one of the wrestlers. Each move has a simple list of icons down the side. This top one is the amount of damage your opponent will take if the attack is successful. This yellow lightning bolt is the amount of stamina you have to spend to play the card. This target icon is the number you have to roll on a 6-sided die to successfully hit your opponent with it. And lastly, this little flame icon is how much momentum you gain if the move is successful. Remember that tug of war momentum tracker we mentioned? That's where this comes into play. Hitting more moves puts your momentum higher. If you manage to move the cube into the yellow spaces on your side of the tracker, your signature move and finisher will receive a -1 to their target roll, meaning a finisher that normally requires a 6 to hit will now hit on a 5 or more. Get the momentum into the red space and that increases to a -2 modifier, so building momentum is important for that big finish. A finisher or signature move is identified by this F or S icon printed on the card. These deal a lot of damage and usually have this pin icon on them. And that brings us onto how you win the game. This is after all a pro wrestling match, and you don't win by reducing your opponent's health to 0. In fact, you can't reduce it to be lower than 1. You win by pinning your opponent or making them submit. This is handled exactly the same from a mechanic standpoint, and is triggered when you choose to activate the pin icon on a successful attack. This mechanic is my favourite aspect of the game, and it's so simple. When the defender is pinned, they roll 2 dice, and if they manage to roll a result where the sum of both dice is lower than their current health value, then they kick out of the pin or escape from the submission, and the match continues. If they fail, they may attempt a second kick out, and if they fail again, they can attempt a 3rd try. If they fail on the 3rd attempt, they are pinned and lose the match. This perfectly emulates the 1-2-3 count of the referee slapping the mat in a real wrestling match. But look at this icon on the finisher card. Haven't we seen this somewhere before? Ah yes, it was on the health track board that tells us when our health is low. And what this icon means is you have 1 less chance to kick out. So if you reduce your opponent to low health and hit them with a finisher, they will only get 1 chance to make that kick out roll. That's because the icons stack. The one on the finisher card reduces their kick out chances by 1, and the one on their health tracker board also reduces it by 1 if they are at low health. But the defender is not powerless. They can spend 3 stamina before rolling their kick out dice to recover 1 health, and they can do this as much as they want, paying 3 stamina per health recovered. So this brings in the really tense resource management as you attempt to keep your stamina as high as possible while dishing out as much damage as you can, and hoping to have enough momentum to pull off the big finish and pin your opponent for the 1-2-3, ring the bell and get the win. Attack cards also have these taunt and recover icons you can trigger after a successful attack, which will help you recover stamina and draw cards. But be warned, while you recover or gloat like this, your opponent will also recover some stamina and health. Attack cards also have these labels describing the move types: strikes, grapples, throws, and aerial. These sometimes interact with special rules of certain wrestlers, but don't do much else. Each card also has these squares and circles of various colours in the bottom corners that can be used to form combos, but I'm not going to get into that here. So that's the basics of a match in ATW. Pass the initiative back and forth as you play cards, spend stamina and deal damage, until finally one player fails to kick out of a pin and is humbled in defeat while their opponent's music plays and they cover themselves in glory. It's a fairly simple system, elevated by its many moving parts. So, what makes this game different to any other card combat one-on-one battle game? Well, aside from the fun of the wrestling theme and the pinfall win condition, not a lot. There's no fancy miniatures, no mat board representing the ring, but what there is, at least if you buy the all or nothing edition of the game, is a fantastic solo play campaign that allows you to take a legendary wrestler like Kurt Angle or Macho Man Randy Savage on a 3-act journey through the world of ATW. To play all 3 acts of the solo campaign, you will have to choose either Randy Savage, Kurt Angle or the British Bulldog to play through the campaign. This is because Act 1, or Chapter 1 as it's properly called, covers how each of those wrestlers were brought to the future and get involved with ATW. Chapter 2 and 3 can be played as a shorter campaign as any wrestler you have in your collection. Chapter 2 is all about a tournament to determine the ATW World Champion and features random events that occur between or sometimes during matches. This will lead you through a story that could feature rivalries and allies, being attacked backstage and sometimes having special stipulations in matches. You will also have the opportunity to do various actions between matches, such as training to gain bonus skills, cutting a promo, which is where a wrestler talks to the audience and attempts to gain the crowd's favour. You can also attack your opponent backstage, if you are a heel. More on that in a moment. Or you can recover from injuries. First, let's talk about what it means to be a heel. In the world of pro wrestling, wrestlers are divided into heels and babyfaces. Essentially, this is bad guys and good guys. A heel is supposed to be the villain of the story, who lies, cheats and steals his way into the championship, while the babyface is the plucky hero, usually an underdog type, who has to overcome the unfair tactics of the heel. In this game, you'll be given an option in Chapter 1, or just choose if you are playing the short campaign, that leads your wrestler to be either a heel or a babyface. This choice allows for a few different options. As mentioned previously, if you are a heel, you can attack your opponent between matches, so why be a babyface? Well, on your campaign board, which tracks your progress through the campaign, you have this face/heel track. As you progress along this track, you will gain new skills, often one-use skills, to be used in matches, printed on these mini-cards. I would say the face skills are a little better than the heels, to compensate for that attack backstage action that only a heel can choose. This is a really fun little system that allows you to add some character to your wrestler. It may also have some impact on random events that take place. Now, before we move on, we mentioned injuries earlier. You can get injured in this campaign, either through random events or by taking too many bumps. What's a bump, you ask? A bump, in wrestling terms, is when a wrestler takes a move where they get knocked onto the ring mat, essentially whenever they fall over. ATW handles this in a really simple way. If you end a match with low health, you gain a bump token. End a match with 1 health, and you will gain 2 bump tokens instead. If you ever have 3 bump tokens, you discard them and draw one of these injury cards. An injury card will result in you starting each match with some sort of penalty. The recover action we mentioned earlier allows you to remove bump tokens and injuries, to make sure you are fresh and healthy for your next match. This campaign board plays a big part in Chapter 2, and you will need to keep track of your victory points as you progress through the matches. Gain enough victory points and you will get your shot at the title. Once all the title business is done with, you will move on to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is much more linear, and honestly doesn't have a whole lot of replay value. So while it's fun and has an amusing story that I won't spoil here, you will often find yourself only replaying Chapter 2 for the short campaign on your quest to become ATW champion. how do we play this campaign? Remember, I said this is a solo campaign, and don't we need someone to play as our opponent? No. The developers have made a great system that allows you to play against an Automa opponent. The Automa opponent has 3 main components. First, it will have these 3 abilities. Replace 3 of the abilities listed on the opposing wrestler's character board. This does reduce their individuality, but it is necessary to remove the opponent's abilities that require a human brain to decide when to use. It allows them to essentially block your weaker and more powerful attacks, steal the initiative, and start laying some smackdown on you. How they do this is decided by the second component of the Automa system, the Automa die. The Automa die is rolled every time you make an attack. This result of a 1 to 2 shield icon tells you they block your attack if it deals 1 or 2 damage. This result means if the attack does 3 or more damage, they will trigger their reversal ability. Remove a tracker cube from this card, steal the initiative, and deal 2 damage to you. And lastly, if they roll this symbol, they will return a tracker cube to their reversal ability card. But be aware, if that card already has 3 cubes on it, they will instead trigger the reversal ability itself. These 2 components form the basis of how your opponent cuts off your attacks and starts counterattacking. So how does the Automa attack? It's pretty simple. You shuffle the wrestler's attack deck and just draw the top card to reveal what type of move they are going to attempt. Don't worry about the stamina cost because they have unlimited stamina, or more accurately, they don't use stamina, meaning they can always perform the move they draw. So now, you just roll the die for them to see if they hit right.
Wrong.
This brings us onto the third and final component of the Automa system, the Automa deck. This small deck of cards is very simple and pulls double duty as both the opponent's attack die roll and also their kick-out roll. Notice each card is divided into 2 halves. This side, with the letter D followed by a number, is used when determining their attack roll, and the half with a K represents their kick-out roll when you pin them. Notice some of their K results have a value of 1, meaning, unlike you, they can kick out if they only have 1 health left, and that's how the Automa works. At least, that used to be all there was to it. Since then, there has been the release of ATW Abu Dhabi Rumble, a standalone expansion to the game that can be played by itself or in conjunction with the original ATW game. One of the new wrestlers in Abu Dhabi Rumble is the legendary Sergeant Slaughter. This also led to the release of a solo campaign for Sergeant Slaughter that can be played with the All or Nothing ATW campaign. But I'm not going to talk about his campaign, because what really makes this mini expansion worth getting is the new Automa die and cards it comes with. This new die adds a new symbol to the Automa die that, when rolled during your attack, requires you to draw a card from this deck. This is the Adapt symbol and the Adapt deck. This represents the Automa thinking about the circumstances of the match and doing something based on its current circumstances. For example, if you have low stamina, it may increase the difficulty of your attack roll, or if you have low health, it may just perform a reversal against your attack. This adds an entirely new layer of depth to the Automa and makes it far more challenging, as, if I am honest, the base campaign version of the Automa did become a little easy to beat after a while, as it just became a bit too swingy based on that Automa die roll, and that could often be exploited. This Sergeant Slaughter campaign is worth getting even if you don't have Abu Dhabi Rumble, just for the improved Automa. It just adds so much to those solo matches. Right, so we've talked enough about how this game works, so now let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. The simple back and forth of this game and lack of complex attacks makes this game really accessible. Just play a card, spend stamina, and roll to hit. All the individual character skills, however, make the game easy to learn, but a bit of a challenge to master. The All or Nothing edition of the game goes even further, adding that solo campaign that is fantastic fun, and for wrestling fans and solo gamers probably makes the game worth the price of entry alone. The All or Nothing edition also adds rules for tag team matches, allowing up to 4 players to get in the ring. It also adds cage matches, with many unique mechanics that allow you to have your wrestler use a steel cage as a weapon before you climb out of it to achieve victory. Finally, it adds a last man standing match that allows you to indulge in all your favourite wrestling tropes, such as hitting them with a steel chair, putting your opponent through a table, or climbing a ladder, and performing some fancy aerial manoeuvre. These new game modes add a lot of variety and fun to those basic matches, and all have really well thought out mechanics and rule sets. Another great point about this game is the developers' passion to add and improve this game with things like that upgrade to the Automa, new match types, and an interestingly designed, ever-expanding roster of wrestlers. The bad. Well, first is that Sergeant Slaughter campaign and the Automa upgrade are an extra purchase. I think this should have just been included with the Abu Dhabi Rumble game, as it seems a bit unfair to have to buy the expansion just to get the completed version of the Automa. The game is also a bit simple, and if you are experienced at card-based battle games, you may find it a little on the simple side, and it may quickly lose its charm. I'd also say it's pretty bad that the All or Nothing edition of this game is a bit pricey. Retailing at $80 for a card game could be a bit of a turn-off if you are not a big wrestling fan. I would say it does have a bit more bang for its buck than the core version of Arkham Horror, another card game that is slightly less expensive at $60, but that game is a campaign-based story and you only get kind of 3 short games out of it, whereas ATW will give you 3 pretty lengthy solo campaigns of about 8 hours each maybe. But we're not really here to compare this with another game. The fact is, the $80 is a little bit pricey, and you're probably going to want to be a fan of wrestling and solo campaign-based games to really feel like this is worth the price tag. The ugly. If I'm honest, the artwork in this game is a bit of an acquired taste. I don't mind this simplistic comic book style, but I can imagine some people might find it underwhelming. The roster may also not be to the taste of many wrestling fans. Who doesn't want to play as The Undertaker, or The Rock, or Stone Cold Steve Austin? Unfortunately, many of these legends of the wrestling world are not in the game, I suspect due to licensing costs. I can't imagine these names are cheap to get the rights to, so I understand why they aren't here. It would also be nice if the attack types like grapples, strikes and throws played into the game a bit more, as many matches will see wrestlers facing off against each other where neither of them have special rules based on attack types. It would be nice to see something like throws causing the target to take a bump on the mat and have to spend stamina to get back up, or if a player uses multiple grapple attacks in a row, the momentum track is moved towards the 0 space as the match slows down and the crowd get bored. But these are really just nitpicks, as the game works fine as it is. So what do I think of all-time wrestling? Well, as a fan of pro wrestling, I really like the All or Nothing edition of the game. I'd say this game is hardly ever boring, as sometimes matches do feel a bit repetitive if you play a lot, and if you are not really a wrestling fan, it probably just won't grab you. So if you're a fan of wrestling and like the idea of becoming ATW's newest world champion, you might want to pick this one up. Just make sure you pick up the All or Nothing edition, as that is far more worth the money than the base retail edition. Oh, and really consider that Sergeant Slaughter expansion too for the Automa upgrade, if nothing else. Well, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please do like, share, subscribe, comment, all that other YouTube stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.